Do you know what's funny about life? By the time most men figure out what they want to do, what they really feel called to, how they're going to go about it, and how they're actually going to pull it off, it's too late. That old saying, if youth only knew, if age only could, is so true because time is your most precious commodity. And I want to help you on this episode of the Dads Making a Difference podcast cherish your time, master your time, and craft a plan. So get your pen ready, get your notes ready. We're going to dive into mastering your time on this episode of the Dads Making a Difference podcast. Hey, my friend, welcome to another episode of the DMD podcast. Time is our most precious commodity. I have realized this as a father. I'm in my mid 40s. I've lived half of my life. Well, let's say I hope I've lived less than half of my life. But time is my most precious commodity, and I know that it's yours. And today I want to help you create a plan so that you can cherish and own your time. And not only that, but master the art of owning your time. I just read a fantastic book. We actually reread it. I read this several years ago and I found it on my bookshelf behind me and picked it up and read it again. And it's by Sharma. It's called The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. It's a fantastic read. You should read it. We'll link it in the show notes. But there is a anecdote, a chapter in here about mastering your time. And in his book, Robin Sharma tells this delightful story of this super successful businessman who ends up selling everything he owns and he goes and lives with the monks in the Himalayas. Now, in one little anecdote in the book, Sharma tells the story about how these monks, although they had no possessions, no material possessions, and lived simple lives, always respected the passing of time. And even though they had no material possessions, they did have one little thing, a small hourglass of blown glass and sand. And these hourglasses served as daily reminders of their mortality and the importance of living life to its fullest, living productive days while advancing in their purpose. And I think of you and I think of myself. This is what we want as fathers. This is what we want as husbands, as business owners, as leaders, as employees. We want to live productive days while advancing in our purpose. It's when we're not advancing that we feel stuck. And it's when you feel stuck that you don't feel that you're making a difference. So, my question for you is this: what is your daily reminder? Maybe you don't have a little hourglass, but what is your daily reminder? What is your reminder of mortality? What is your reminder of the importance of living a full, productive life while still advancing toward your goals? Is it your wife? Is it your kids? Your relationships? Is it your work? In the book, Robin Sharma calls this idea of valuing time, time consciousness, being always aware of the passing of time. Now, I'm not saying that I want you as a father sitting there watching your watch or the clock on the wall. If you got one of those old fashioned analog clocks, as my kids would say, watching each second go by. Not that type of time consciousness. I just want you to be aware that every moment that you're breathing, every moment that you're alive is a gift. And with this gift, we can make a huge impact. And it doesn't have to be a worldwide impact. It doesn't have to be a citywide impact. It doesn't have to be a community, a school wide. It doesn't have to be that type. It can be an impact in your home, but you are here to make an impact. Sharma also has this quote in the book. He says, "Those who use time from an early age are rewarded with rich, productive, and satisfying lives. Those who have never been exposed to the principles of time mastery never realize their enormous potential." So those who use time from an early age are rewarded with rich, productive, and satisfying lives. Those who have never been exposed to the principles of time mastery never realize their enormous potential. I think of how we set examples for our kids. I think of how I am managing my time, owning my time, crafting my time, and the message that it's sending, both verbal and nonverbal, to my kids, so how they observe me interact, how they see me in the home, and I'll get into this in a little bit, and how they experience a relationship with me. And Kim sees it too. My wife sees it too. So when I think about men and their goals, whether you have children or you don't, whether you are married or you're single, when I think of men at all levels, successful or unsuccessful, wealthy or poor, time is the great leveler. So whether we are privileged or disadvantaged, wealthy or not, successful, like I said, or unsuccessful, we all have been allotted the same 24 hours in a day, the same 7 days a week. And what separates us as men in becoming those who live exceptional lives versus those who feel stuck is that those who reach their goals, those who live fulfilled with their families, it comes down to how they own their time. We live in a time where we think that being busy is being productive, and there is a clear difference between being productive and being busy. I don't know about you, but as a dad right now, I feel like I'm chasing my kids to all the things, all the activities, all the sports, all the school things, and we're chasing them all over the place. And truthfully, I'm kind of good with it. And I'm good with it for this reason, because as I reflect on our summer months, we spent a lot of time together as a family. My kids don't do camps. They don't do sports camps. They don't do club sports during August. So we get away. And we spent a lot of time together. And Kim and I had a conversation about being able to dive in full tilt for September. When the kids got back to school, we agreed that we'd be in all the activities, all the things, you name it. Well, you know what? We're feeling it now. We are feeling it now. We're into October. We've only a month in. And while things are ending this month and new things begin, we're feeling it. And the times where we feel it the most, the times where I, as a dad, as a husband, as a leader, as a father, feel it the most, are the times when I don't feel prepared. I feel reactive. I'm reacting after work, getting a kid to somewhere. I'm reacting, trying to create dinner, and Kim's reactive, trying to do the same. But when we respond to the demands on our time by being proactive in planning how we're going to use our time, I don't feel it as much. And so it seems like every day, every minute, every hour is spoken for. So do you feel the same? Do you feel the same right now that in your life, every day, every hour, every minute is spoken for? Do you feel that you are constantly following the plans of other people? Because I do at times. Do you feel that you have no autonomy, no power, no influence on how you get to spend your minutes, your hours, and your weeks? If you do, that's a problem. But we live in a time where it's extremely easy to become busy and very hard to be productive. Busyness versus productiveness. We have bosses, colleagues, employees, family members, community members, all vying for our attention. And we know that the entire time in our gut, that for us to feel our best, like I know when I feel my best, to be truly at my best and truly at your best, you need to be able to be in control of your time. If we go back to this mentality or imagery of the hourglass, of the sand, you think about pouring that sand in your hand, and no matter how hard you grip it, that sand starts to seep through your fingers. And that sand representing the time going through your hands, and there's nothing you can do about it, no matter how hard you squeeze. And so many of us feel that way. Another day at work, another kid's activity, same thing, Groundhog Day, day after day after day. But that's not how you have to live. It's simply not true. That does not have to be your reality. You do not have to be reacting to the demands of other people day after day after day. Instead, you can have a plan, you can have a roadmap in front of you that you follow to stay on track so that you can stick to your plan so you can feel your best day after day, week after week. Now, maybe a roadmap for some of our guys isn't the best analogy because we're not going to stop or ask for directions, but go with me here. There's times when we need to stop and ask for directions. And you need a roadmap to follow. Because without that structure, without those guidelines, those barriers, things fall apart. We need structure in our time. And when you start to control your time, your most valuable resource, you start to feel like you are succeeding, you are in control, that you are moving forward. And you know what happens? You start to feel like you can do anything, that you can achieve anything because you control your time. You're not going to be distracted by the demands of others. You own it. You're confident in it. And that's where I want you to be. So let me give you this example. Let's say it's Monday morning. We all love Mondays. Monday morning in your schedule, and you're looking at your calendar and it's overflowing with appointments, meetings, kids' activities. It's all coming up on the Monday. And rather than getting up at your usual 6 a.m. time and gulping down your cup of coffee and speeding off to work and then speeding through a stressful day of catch up, what if instead you took 15 minutes the night before on a Sunday to plan that day so that you could respond, not react? Or even to be more effective, let's say you took 1 hour on a quiet Sunday morning or Saturday morning to organize your entire week with your wife, a family planning session with your kids, to map out how the week was going to go, who's driving who's making meals, who's planning, who's watching, who's cheering, who's reading, who's sleeping. We honestly have to do that sometimes. Who gets to go to bed first? And in your daily planner, you wrote out when you would meet with your friends, when you would meet with your clients, when you would meet with your employees, when you would do all the different activities that were demanding your attention. But not only that, most importantly, you mapped out your personal, social, physical, and spiritual development goals for that week. And that also went into your weekly calendar. That is something you prioritize. That is something that you mapped out and created structure for. That, my friend, that is the secret to living a life of balance. Now, we've talked on this podcast about how work-life balance doesn't exist. I believe that. I believe there's a time of counterbalance where we need to put more focus in one area, less focus in another, and vice versa, and it switches. But the secret to living a life of balance is that you can prioritize what you need and then fit in the demands of others around it. This simple act is a secret to living a life where you are in control. And by anchoring the most vital aspects of your life into your daily schedule, you ensure that your week and your life retain a strong sense of meaning and peace. Meaning and peace. I want to wake up, and I want you to wake up every single morning knowing that you have a purpose, you have meaning, and you can live with peace knowing that you are taking one step every day towards that goal, towards that outcome, towards that peace. So here's the challenge. We feel like we have to run at the same pace as everyone else. We have to run the same race. We feel that we have to keep up with those around us at work. We have to keep up with everything that's happening on social media, everything that's happening in the news worldwide, everything that's happening in politics. Heck, we don't want to be behind the conversation at the water cooler. We need to watch the sports events so we know what's happening, the latest events of who's who and who's dating who in Hollywood. We want to be part of the conversation and not on the sidelines. But the problem is we never have time for us. So why do we feel that we have to do things the same way as everyone else? Here is my challenge. We need to run our own race. You need to run your own race. So why not start working early so that you can have time to take off for a workout or go for a walk at lunch? Why not put in a few extra hours at the beginning of your week so that you can cut out early on a Friday so you can take your kids to the park or to a sporting event as a family? Why not simply take 2 hours on the weekend to plan out your meals prior to the Costco run so that you can ensure that your family is eating healthy day after day, PFC every 3, and that from 4 o'clock to 6 p.m. every night, you're not having chaos and arguing about what to eat, and you don't get fast food day after day after day. I'm saying this, plan your week, be intentional, and you'll begin to manage your time creatively and effectively. Have the discipline to focus your time around your priorities, not the priorities of others, because the most meaningful things in your life should never be sacrificed to those who are the least meaningful. Don't let others determine for you what's important to you. You are the only one who gets to decide what's important to you. When I did my education degree, well, 20 years ago now, when I started my ed degree, there was a saying for new teachers, and we all had this, and I think it was on a wall somewhere, that failing to plan is planning to fail. Without a lesson plan or unit plan, going into a classroom without writing down the outcomes, long-term objectives, specific learning outcomes, you were going to fail. You were setting yourself up for failure. You didn't have the structure, the guidelines, something to look forward to, the North Star have you. So you need to hold space in your life for you, for creating that plan, for following that structure. And as you plan, begin writing down not only your, of course, your appointments with others, but also those important appointments with yourself, to read, to relax, to work out, to be active, to walk with your wife, to wrestle with your kids. By doing these things, you will be far more productive in your time. Never forget this, that the time spent on rich activities, those rich activities in your non-work hours, is never a waste. And truthfully, it makes you way more efficient and effective in your working hours. So if you prioritize the things important to you, you are going to show up better for other people. One of the best things that I could have done in my journey was to stop living my life in compartments. This is what I mean by that. I used to always separate my calendar: work and home, coaching, home, clients, home. And once I understood that everything I did, whether I do it privately at work or publicly at work or at home, it all paints a picture of my life. What you do at work, at home, all comes together and paints a picture for your life. I like the saying, how you do one thing is how you do everything. You can't separate the two. You are who you are. You need to create a picture of the lifestyle you want. And yes, I was thinking about this as I was thinking about this, mapping out this episode. It's like, yeah, my picture sometimes looks like a grade 1 collage that's come home, that's up on the fridge. It's a mess, but it's somehow organized. But you need to do it. A couple of weeks ago on this podcast, I talked about the dad as being the thermostat in the home. The way that you act at home affects the way you act at work. The way you act at work affects the way that you act at home. And the way that you treat people at work affects the way you treat your family and friends at home. We live a life of busyness. We live a life where we want to be productive, but we live a life that takes us into multiple environments. And we know that those environments, although they might not interact, they interact with each other through us. So the way that you own your time at work impacts the way you own your time at home and vice versa. But I can hear you right now. I've heard it before. Cam, I'm busy. I don't have time to take breaks at work. I don't have time to get my workout in. I don't have time to map out my meals. I work most evenings. I feel crushed under the demands of my schedule right now. Life is busy. Listen, I get it. I'm there with you, but the fact is this, that being busy is no excuse. And I know that's hard to hear. Because here's my question for you. What are you busy with? What are you busy with? The things that matter or the things that you just have to do? I think we've all heard about the Pareto principle, that 80-20 rule, that 80% of the results in your life that you achieve come from 20% of the activities that occupy your time. So as you sit down and you map out your week, you need to decide week by week, what are the impact or high impact activities in my calendar, and how are they going to impact my life long term? Think long term. Too often we get sucked into thinking in the short term. Short term, what do I need to do tomorrow, this weekend, this week? And we don't think long term enough. Do the activities now that are going to impact you later. Those things like time spent nourishing your relationships with your wife and your kids, time spent nurturing relationships with your friends and family, time in nature, time for gratitude, time for prayer, time for working out and physical health. All of those things are high impact activities. By taking care of those 20%, you will be able to impact the other 80%. Because truthfully, guys, there's going to be some day when you're not able to work. And in those days, the ones that you spent nourishing those relationships with your family, those ones you prioritized your health, those are going to be the days you remember and you're thankful for. Here's what I've learned in my journey. I've made many, many mistakes. And by the way, listen, like I know this stuff and I still struggle with it. Like I haven't figured this out. I am not an expert. I am just a guy who lives an extremely, extremely busy calendar, but I own my time. And I'm still growing and learning. And I'm sharing these strategies with you because they have worked for me. And they've worked for the men that I've connected with and been around and helped coach. They work. And I want to share them with you. You know, I've created trainings and I've coached men for 9 years now. I've committed to coaching kids and teenagers on teams. I've officiated and volunteered and done all the things because I thought it was the right thing to do. And truthfully, as I built Fight the Dad Bod, started Dads Making a Difference, did contracted coaching, all this stuff, I thought I was telling myself I was doing this for my family. So somehow I could help my family. But it was actually pulling me away from my family. And I saw my kids growing further from me. I saw my wife growing further from me. We didn't have the conversations that we wanted to have. We didn't have the time for it. Why? Because I had mapped out all my time for other people. In 2022, I had a choice to make. I could continue pushing hard with all these things, all these activities. Like I said, I was doing things. I was coaching in Fight the Dad Bod, building Dads Making a Difference. I was doing some contracted leadership coaching. I was working as a vice principal. I was doing all these things, and I continued to push all those things. And I pushed out my family and my friends and my relationships. And I realized in that time, in that moment, I had to take a step back. The breaking point for me was, I believe it was in the fall of 2022. I was tucking my son into bed at night, and I had so much going on at that time. And I rolled over and I was like tucking him in, and we said a prayer, and he said, "Dad," he looked over at me, 2022. So he's like 8 years old. And he says, "Dad, do you have a call again tonight, or can you read me a book?" And I was pretty run down, so I think I cried. And he's like, "What are you doing?" But I got emotional because I was like, in that moment, I realized something was wrong. In that moment, I realized that I was prioritizing the wrong things, and my kids were starting to see it. So I started to control my time. I started to cut back on areas that were distracting me from my family. I started to cut back on my coaching. I started to cut back on my social media presence. I started to cut back on volunteering and saying yes to everything. And I started to say no more often. And I started to prioritize the high impact activities that mattered most. And I challenge you to do the same. Here's another point for you. Don't let others steal your time. Be wary of the time thieves. These are the people who always call just as you're about to put the kids to sleep, or call at dinner, or you've settled into your favorite chair at that time at 9 o'clock at night to read a book. These are the people who are going to have a knack of dropping into your office unannounced just as you're trying to get into some deep work, and or you're just taking a breather. You have a few moments where you're going to meditate or pray. And these are the people who will interrupt your conversations only to tell you for 10 to 15 minutes about all the amazing things they've done on their weekend. And then they don't ask you a single question. They walk away. You must be ruthless with your time. I'm not saying be ruthless to other people. I say be ruthless with your time. Learn to say no. Have the courage to say no to the little things in life that will give you the power to say yes to the big things. Now, I'm not telling you that it's easy to do this, but there's some things you can do. You can shut your door to your office once in a while. You can not pick up the phone every time it rings, not respond to every text immediately. There's a time for your convenience, not for the convenience of others. Ironically, people will respect you more when they see that you are a person who values their time. They will realize that your time is precious to you, and they'll value it. And you know what? the time that you do spend with them, they will value that more too. And your relationship with them will grow. I had a call recently with a gentleman who was interested in our Fight the Dad Bod coaching program. And on the call, he said, I've heard this before, but on the call, he let me know that he just didn't feel that he had the time to get the results that he wanted. He didn't feel like he had the time in this busy upcoming holiday season to prioritize his health. And there was so much happening in his life that he just couldn't succeed in doing this. He actually told me on the phone, he said, hey, Cam, maybe now's not a good time. Maybe we wait until after the holidays and we can reconnect in the new year. Do you know my regret from that conversation? My regret is not saying to him, how do you know you're guaranteed to make it through the holidays? I know that's harsh, but it's true. It's true because I think as men, we have this thing in our heads that we're acting like we have 500 years to live, and we don't. And you know what else? The time you do have, you want to be able to spend it with those you love in the best health, the best energy, the clarity of mind that you deserve. In the book, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, Robin Sharma poses this question: what would I do today if this day was my last? And how would I live if I treated my family, my colleagues, and even those I didn't know, knowing that today was my last day? A little bit morbid, right? Like I'd like to think that I've been productive and excited to live every moment to its maximum. Sharma calls this in the book the deathbed mentality. And it may sound morbid because it's talking about death, but it's actually exciting when you think about it because it gives us a time frame. It reminds us that today could be our last, so to savor it to the fullest. And if today was my last, did I spend my day today spending it on the activities that matter most? So here's my challenge: savor every day. Savor every day. But that requires you to live your life to the fullest, which requires you to own your time. So here's my challenge, my friend: respect your time. Time is your most precious commodity. It is not renewable. Focus on your priorities and maintain balance and simplify your life. And the only way to simplify your life is to ensure that you're spending your time on the 20% of the activities that are going to have the highest impact for you. But to be able to do this, you must have a plan, a roadmap to own your time. So this weekend, sit down, take inventory, and create a plan for your week. Do it on your own, or do it with your wife, or do it as a family. The 2 hours that you spend planning your week will be worth it beyond measure. Trust me. And if you feel lost with this right now, if you feel like you don't know where to start with putting your time and prioritizing your time and you need some strategies, I'm doing a live training in our Fight the Dad Bod community tomorrow, actually October 10th, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And I'm going through exactly how to do this. 4 steps for planning the perfect week for busy dads. I'll include the link down in the show notes to that community. It's a free community. The training is completely free. You can join me. Would love to see you there. But we're going to map through the 4 steps for planning your perfect week. I call it crafting your perfect week planner for busy dads. And so I invite you to join me there. My friend, I appreciate you. You've got this. You can own your time. You have the time, but you need to create it, and you need to have intention and put it out there. And you need to say no to more things and focus on what matters most. Have a great rest of your week. Plan your time, own your time, and be a dad making a difference. I'll see you on the next episode of the DMD podcast.